The NBA draft is Wednesday. Luckily, we have Brian Windhorst here to give us the latest with his Windy Watch. Windy, take us through.
Well, Ryan, we're still a little over 48 hours away, and we don't know who exactly the Atlanta Hawks are going to take with that #1 pick. There's a lot of belief that they're leaning towards Zachary Richelet, the French wing, 6'9", great skills on the outside. But Alex Sarr, the big man from France, is an interesting key situation here because he has refused to work out for the Hawks, trying, the league believes, to force his way to Washington at 2. But the Hawks are sending out a message today that they are still willing to take Alex Sarr. So let's see how that develops over the next 2 days. Where this draft is going to really begin, people believe, is at the #3 pick with the Houston Rockets. Donovan Clingan out of UConn is a player that some teams may be willing to move up for. And if he is not picked by the Hawks or Wizards, it's possible the Rockets could move this pick. They're very deep at center. They would not be interested in necessarily doing that. But they have made it clear that that pick is going to be available, and they're listening to offers. We'll see if anybody moves up to take Clingan or if the Rockets stay put. That's a big deal. As we get into free agency, which will begin this weekend, we're seeing really what is a carousel of shooting guards developing. There's really 4 to keep an eye on: Klay Thompson, Paul George, DeMar DeRozan, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is expected to opt out of his contract with the Denver Nuggets. My speculation and league sources believe that somebody's going to be left without a chair here. There's a couple of teams that are interested in signing these guys in free agency, such as Philadelphia or Orlando, but not everybody's going to have a spot. And that could leave either Klay Thompson or Paul George maybe staying put, thinking that that's their best option. So that shooting guard position, DeMar DeRozan, a possibility as well, maybe to leave the Bulls or stay put. All of those things are going to define the first few hours of free agency. That's where the star power is in this free agent class.
Legs, does Paul George make the 76ers a true title contender?
They need that type player, no doubt about it, right? But that's not the most important thing. Most important thing simply is Joel Embiid being healthy for 2 straight months starting April 15th. Right? If that happens, now you're in the mix legitimately to listen. No, right now, nobody's on the same level as the Boston Celtics, but I think we're all trying to see who's going to claim that spot clearly as the #2 in the East. They could be that if that happened, as long as you add some talent on the wing. Paul George fits the bill. Here's the challenge with Paul George. Look, Philadelphia is desperate for a title. There is a lot of pressure that comes with playing for that team, particularly in the postseason. And we have seen the effect that it's had on people in the past, in recent memory. James Harden, Ben Simmons, 2 guys that come to mind. Paul George is a guy that's had some moments as well throughout his career. Been a bit spotty in the playoffs. Does he answer something for them? No question. He's certainly an upgrade over Tobias Harris in terms of what you give them offensively at that spot. But what you really need is a guy that you feel like is not going to be affected by the moment in those big spots in the postseason. I'm not sure that that's your best answer if you've got some other options available at that spot.
All right, so riddle me this, Legs.
Yeah.
If this happens, what is then the hierarchy of your playmakers/scorers? Who gets the ball in Philly?
Oh, that's good. Well, Joel Embiid's always going to be #1.
I got you.
Assuming he's on the court and healthy.
And then?
I would go, for me, it's Tyrese Maxey.
Okay.
Okay, but look, Paul George, you don't bring him in to be a guy that's going to be kind of spectating in those spots. You don't bring him in if that's what you're planning on doing with
Do
him.
you feel that sets back the development of Tyrese Maxey to bring in a Paul George?
No, I wouldn't say that. But I do question sometimes how much of the Tobias Harris mystery, if I may call it that, was system versus mindset. Because if essentially you're just going to swap those 2 guys out, yes, Paul George has a different pedigree in terms of what he's done as a defender and as a scorer, frankly, in this league. But what does it look like, right? I wonder about that just a little bit, because to me, if he's healthy, I think I might switch my hierarchy a little bit and have Paul George kind of be your second fiddle then.
Wendy, is Paul George the guy, though? Is this the most important domino in free agency?
Well, let's remember that Paul George has 3 options. 1 is to re-sign with the Clippers. 2 is to enter free agency and go somewhere else like Philly or Orlando. 3, he can opt into his contract and get traded by this weekend. That is something that is going to come to a head in the next day or 2 if he wants to go with that option, because obviously you'd have to negotiate a trade, and then the team wouldn't necessarily need salary cap space. So the Paul George sweepstakes is going to come to a head, at least that aspect of it, faster than those other players who are going to be free agents like Klay Thompson or DeMar DeRozan. So Paul George has a different menu of options, and we're going to see some action in that probably coming up, very quickly after the draft.
Well, whatever it is, we know that Paul George is a championship caliber player who hasn't shown up in the playoffs like some of the greats that we've seen. And we've seen that in Philly more than once. So it will be interesting to see where he ends up.
NBA